Ask your question again, Bert, please.
Yeah, have we decided how we're going to use the 10 questions that Oslam and Brent developed?
I think we bring it down to 4, right? Brent, I saw 4 questions you included in the presentation.
I use those as kind of the larger questions that are kind of our biggest questions. You had additional questions about each of the individual 6 grand challenges. What I was thinking is, based on the size of the groups, maybe give everybody those broad questions plus a couple of the specific questions, depending on how many people come, etc. So.
Oh, okay, we can do that. I thought that we were just going to go with 4 and then ask the people to, I mean, we can just still do that. We can, I mean, I can add those for the other rest of the 10 questions, but we can tell them just pick one, the area, and then talk about that. They may not even get to it because I'm sure there'll be some discussions about 1 or 2 questions. If we are lucky, maybe more.
Yeah,
but,
I think if you offer them the 4 questions, Brent, that will probably be quite sufficient.
Yeah.
And of course, as we discussed before, they can exercise their discretion and make some other comments if they wish. But
yes.
As we well know, knowledge workers are not necessarily known for their obedience. So there's a high likelihood that they will choose their own questions.
yeah,
And I think that's a good thing we can
Yes.
benefit from. Yeah.
Do you have the 4 questions that you could send me, or what I'd like to do is put them at the beginning of the document.
good idea, Pete. Yeah.
Sure. So that's at the end of the last slide, and I can just put it on the chat.
Great.
I actually I so okay, let me.
I just added in the rest as an additional slide, by the way. So
Okay. So these were the questions.
Excellent.
And I think you already have a Google Doc, right? Pete, or do we wanna? I'm not sure how.
Ask your question again, please.
So are you planning to have the groups comment on the Google Doc? Are you going to share a Google Doc with them, or are we?
Yes.
How do we? Okay. So you have that Google Doc. I had one, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to.
Yes, the Google Doc is all ready to go. Now
Okay.
I'm putting the questions in right now, and then I'll send you the address for the Google Doc so you can access it.
Good morning, Eli.
Eli Berniker. What a great man.
Yeah.
Good morning. Okay.
We're just getting ourselves organized here. It's good to see people starting to arrive.
Okay, Brent Noslam and Bert, I just put the address for the Google Docs for the teamwork in chat.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pete.
And I'll go ahead and insert the Google Doc address for the slides that Brent is doing and for the Google Doc for our deliberations in chat several times as we go through so that people will be able to pursue that.
Thanks, Pete. Okay.
And I do want you guys to know that as part of this, I have invited the elephant to join us in the room. So there he is in all his glory in Thailand. And he was great fun because the mahouts told us that we were not allowed to get close to him because he had no sense of humor. Well, I'm assuming that that's the way generative AI is, right? It has no sense of humor.
Oh, very good, Pete.
It was really kind of fun that they had, I think, 10 elephants there, plus this guy that was not allowed to be around humans. And we all, it was a whole bunch of humanitarian workers, and we all got to ride into the jungle with them. And we followed the route of a little creek, a little stream. And as we went, the mahouts would run up onto the side and with their machetes, chop down banana trees and throw them down into the stream. And then the elephants would stop and have a little bite of banana to fuel their walk through the jungle. And so it was really an amazing experience for somebody that's never been around elephants before. Great, great fun.
Hello, Sean.
Yeah.
What time of day is it for you?
It's
I think it must be pretty early.
Sean, your audio broke up a little bit. Could you say your time again, please? I still did not copy that.
Right. Hopefully, you
Eli,
can-
Eli, good morning to you, and Craig, good morning to you.
yeah, I guess it still is morning for Craig. Yeah. Oh, Hannah,
Yeah,
all the way from the Basque.
yeah, I think she's still in Spain, isn't she, on sabbatical?
I think so.
Hey,
Hi, are
Hey,
you?
Hannah, still in Spain?
yes, still in
Yeah.
Spain, still in Basque, yes.
Oh, tough life, tough life.
Tough life. Indeed.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Are you okay?
Oh, yeah. I've had a couple of good conversations with Frone the last while, so.
I heard
gonna
that.
I'm going to do a session with your colleagues later on, right? This month. I
Yeah,
think.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We're looking forward to it.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. We do.
I don't know if you'll be back by that. You're still going to be in Spain, aren't you?
I will be in Spain until 22nd, and then I will drive from Spain to Norway, and I will spend 1.5 weeks, almost 2 weeks. So it's Spain, it's France, it's Andorra, it's France, it's Austria, it's Italy, of course, it will be Czechia, and I'm not sure about the rest. Probably Poland or Germany. I haven't decided yet.
And are the children with you?
No, I have my boyfriend. It's weird to call it a boyfriend when you are 45, isn't it? My
Your
I don't
partner.
know. I don't an English term for it. My partner. Yeah.
Well, you guys have great fun. I've been
Yeah, have a safe
at
trip.
a distance.
Okay, we're getting close.
Hello, Valentina.
Hi everyone, lovely to see you. Hope everyone's well.
Yeah. Well, we'll give them a couple more minutes, I guess, AP.
We can do that.
Yeah, maybe give them till 5 after. People coming. Here's Marcia.
Actually, Peter, there's a very interesting things in viewing your deck. I remember you sent a deck showing like there's like a triple ring for that AI design sprint or something similar to that. And very interesting, recently I'm trying to design a workshop with appreciative inquiry for the client. Then I found that for appreciative inquiry and SOAR, they have a 5D.
Ah,
Most
interesting.
keywords exactly the same.
And the slide deck came from Brent. He's the one that he and Oslam are the ones that prepared that. I'm glad you found it useful. That's really fun that made sense. That's good.
Yeah. Actually, in the corporate project, generally now, most of the time, especially for this kind of digital project, the first stage one, is actually to help the company to build the project. So that is the define for them instead of the user research at the first moment. And then only when the executive approve the project and the innovation department or maybe digital CDO help them to build the portfolio of those approved projects, and then they start the user research. So
Okay.
that's the second stage. And the third stage is to with mature maybe concept or maybe the prototype, then they start to try to develop the rough product or something like that.
Excellent. So you're seeing that those stages as being useful and accurate in your work.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, it's 3 minutes after the hour. I've already started the recording of the video. I was late starting the recording on the previous 2 webinars, so I thought I would start it early, so I did not forget. So I apologize for the previous ones of not getting everything. Welcome. We're delighted that you're here. This is the 3rd in a series of workshops on the 6 grand challenges of human-centered artificial intelligence. As I mentioned at the end of the last workshop, I'm very excited about this. I think this has been enlightening and helpful, certainly for my thinking, and we've received feedback from a number of you who've participated that this has been helpful. And Sean, thank you for that feedback that you just gave us. This is a tough topic that is not going away. If anything, it's coming at us faster and more furiously. So let's gird up our loins and get ready to go. We have with us Bert Painter, who's the emperor of the Socio-Technical Systems Roundtable, who is formerly called the president, but by fiat, I've designated him as emperor. I don't know that anybody else will go along with that, but at least I thought it was a good idea. No, I guess Bert doesn't even want it. Okay. Well, El Presidente then. How about we go with that? Bert, thank you for being here, and Bert will speak up from time to time, and we'll have some concluding comments at the end. Our main presenters and organizers of the dialogue are Aslam Gabriel and Garibay and Brent Winslow. They are the lead co-authors of the article on the 6 grand challenges of human-centered artificial intelligence, which debuted last year after a couple of years of research by a group of, I think it was 26 people that were involved in the writing of the article, and then even more people that were involved in the conversations leading up to it. I would point out to you that that is an example of a discretionary coalition of knowledge workers looking at a subject, taking it on, and doing the work necessary to be able to make sense of it. That's the key core of knowledge work and the task that we all have to do. The work that they did in preparing for this paper and subsequently for the presentations we're doing is a classic example of extraordinary cutting-edge knowledge work. So we congratulate you guys on that, plus on the very fact of the product. The product gives all of us an idea of what is the structure of this 6 grand challenges body of knowledge, and what is human-centered artificial intelligence. And then for extra measure, they throw in, these are the action items we need to pay attention to in terms of what research needs to be done and what actions can we take in implementation of these kinds of hardware, software elements in organizations. This is a tour de force. Brent works with Google in San Francisco. Aslam works at University of Southern Florida or Central Florida?
Central Florida.
Central Florida.
Yeah.
And is a professor with bona fides in information technology, computer science. Now, I will say one thing about Brent. He has done significant work in the arena of application of technology in healthcare and innovation in healthcare. And the session that we did last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, the second session, brought out some of the very interesting parts of the research that he's done. And one of the things that struck me about a couple of the articles that he put into chat for us last time was that there is core scientific research being done right now that most of us don't know about. And it's people like Brent and Aslam that are pointing out to us those things where the cutting edge is moving forward. So I'm particularly grateful for that. Without further ado, Brent and Aslam, you're going to share a slide deck and then frame up some questions for our dialogue that we do in small groups. So y'all take it away now.
Will do. Let me share screen here. Everybody can see that and hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our third of 3 webinars discussing this article that we put together in Human-Centered AI. I'm glad once again to be with Aslam and really glad that we had a couple of years to put this article together. And we've been talking ever since nonstop about what do we do next? Where do we go next? The first webinar, we really kind of dived into these 6 grand challenges. As Peter just mentioned, on the second webinar, we talked a lot more about specific applications within health. And right now we want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is generative AI. So just as a quick review again, 2 quick review slides. What is human-centered AI? Again, our purpose is to shift the focus back to humans, reposition them at the center of the AI design, development, and deployment lifecycle by creating technologies that are compatible with human values, protect human safety, and assure human agency. A good way to understand HCI is the purpose, which I just mentioned, the principles, the processes, and the products. The principles strive to improve human performance in ways that are reliable, safe, and trustworthy by augmenting rather than replacing humans and human capabilities. HCAI processes consider individual human differences, demands, values, expectations, preferences, rather than just what the algorithm can do and how it can be applied. And the HCAI products result in systems that are accessible, understandable, and trustworthy, and that also allow for high levels of human control and automation to occur simultaneously. So this is one of the figures we came up with in the 6 grand challenges that kind of shows everything, and it does show them across the purpose, principles, processes, and products that I just mentioned. So the first challenge that we identified, human well-being, represents the overall purpose of HCAI, ensuring that AI systems are centered on actually improving people's lives and experiences. The second and third are the principles that underlie human-centered AI. They ensure responsible design and development. They protect human privacy. The fourth and fifth are the processes used to develop that, comprehensive design, evaluation, governance, and oversight frameworks for appropriate guidance and control. And finally is the ultimate product, the vision of future human AI interaction. And as Peter mentioned, this paper really served as a call to action to conduct R&D in AI that accelerates the movement towards more fair, equitable, and sustainable societies. We really tried to think globally. We brought a group together globally across North and South America, Europe, and Asia to define these grand challenges, these purposes, principles, processes, and products. And we were really inspired by the UN Sustainable Development Goals to think really broadly in terms of how AI can improve people's lives. And we talk about that at some length. It's quite a lengthy paper if you've read it already. So just to take one quick step back, there have been some questions about what are we actually talking about here? We mentioned AI. How does that relate to machine learning or deep learning, or the elephant in the room we mentioned, generative AI? So this is just a kind of an easy figure, and you've probably seen figures like this that show various circles overlapping with different aspects of AI. But AI is a field in computer science that focuses on empowering machines to exhibit capabilities that previously were just analogous to human cognition. Things like data analysis, learning from experience, understanding complex concepts, exhibiting some level of creativity, etc. This is not a new field. This is a field that's been around for many decades, that's experienced winters where basically no funding or development was occurring, and massive booms where a lot was occurring. We're definitely in one of those right now, which I'll talk about more. Machine learning is a subfield within AI. Again, it's quite an old field as well. It finds patterns within data sets using either labeled data and supervised learning approaches or unlabeled data and unsupervised approaches. Deep learning, or DL, is a subset of machine learning, or ML. This is one that has become extremely popular over the last 10 years or so. It operates through deep neural networks. One issue with this is, and I'll point this out now and come back to it, is often the results of these algorithms are less interpretable. They're more black box. They're associated with neural nets that have very many layers, and they're very hard to describe in terms of inputs and outputs, as opposed to some other aspects of machine learning that have simplistic equations that an individual could understand. So that's something I'll come back to. And generative AI, finally, the elephant in the room, is a subset of deep learning. It's focused on generating text, images, code, video, audio, etc., typically using either GANs, which are generative adversarial networks, or GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers, relatively new inventions that have really started to change the world. We'll talk about what ways it might be changing the world. But before we do that, this was a slide we presented in the first webinar. We kind of talked about how the grand challenges actually came to be. As Peter mentioned, we had 26 international experts with various backgrounds in academia and industry and government from North and South America, Europe, and Asia that came together. We identified what we thought were major challenges through online questionnaire. We concept mapped them, we summarized them into areas, we ranked them through online questionnaire. We discussed them at a conference we had over 2 days at HCI International, and ultimately over those 2 years developed these into a consensus publication, which we've shared. You've seen in January 2023 that was released. So what am I missing on this plot? I mean, what happened November 30th of 2020, that should say 2023, sorry, 2022 is correct. ChatGPT was released. It started the current AI boom. It was the fastest growing consumer software application in history. It gained over 100 million users in just 2 months. As a point of comparison, it took YouTube 4 years to get to 100 million users. There's other software applications that have that number. There's some that have 1 billion users, but this grew so quickly and so fast worldwide. It really changed things for a lot of people. How has that actually changed things? I want to kind of take a step globally and see how this has changed things. This is kind of a snapshot of the global generative AI landscape as of last month. It's being used across various industries for business intelligence. It's being used in education, tons of synthetic data generation, personalization, design, customer satisfaction, creativity, etc. And people are finding new ways to use this every single day. One of the best ways to figure out how to use it is just to use it and use it in new ways. While it's primarily been driven by Silicon Valley, it's also happening worldwide. So what this plot shows is the type of generative AI, whether it's multimodal, meaning it provides both text as well as video or audio, etc., whether it's just a chat bot, whether it provides text, image, video, 3D, audio, games, code, business intelligence, and the list goes on and continues to change. And as I mentioned, while this is primarily driven by a kind of a small area in the United States, it's also happening widely across North America, Europe, and Asia, with additional companies in Oceania, South America, and Africa. It's a growing international book of players. It's happening everywhere. I think we've all used it. We've seen the value in it. We've also seen potentially some of the emerging challenges associated with these tools. So I want to take a look at some of these challenges and whether they differ from the grand challenges that we came up with and published in January of 2023. Just across a few fields here with a few examples, and then we'll kind of generalize this even more. In politics, these generative AI tools have the potential to provide accurate, convincing audio, video, text at scale. We're coming up on an election in the United States. This happens worldwide. You can get a lot of information out to voters very quickly at very low cost. Some of the challenges are nation, state level social media manipulation. Özlem's talked about this a lot, online influence, deep fakes, etc. Recall that there was a deep fake video of President Zelensky of Ukraine surrendering to Russia at the start of that war. It wasn't very, it was obvious that it was fake if we looked at the eyes and some of the words, etc. But these are getting better. These are going to be more difficult to identify as we move forward, as these tools get better and better. Specifically within social media, it would allow you to create a large amount of inexpensive, high quality content for an individual whose career is their social media profile and presence. This allows them to do things that they weren't able to do before at scale. This has also been identified by a number of countries as a major national security threat. So in the past, it required, for instance, an army of human internet trolls. Gen AI now can provide realistic fake content across a number of inauthentic accounts at scale to advance narratives that serve the interests of other governments. Within search, it could allow for faster individualized results across viewpoints, but certainly hallucination, which we'll talk about a lot more, can lead to incorrect predictions, false positives, false negatives, just false information. From the image generation perspective, it does provide accurate and creative image generation at scale. That's across images, obviously video that we've talked about as well. But there's certainly some issues in this. We talked about deep fakes, images, video, voice. That was in the news very recently, as well as the potential poisoning of training data, which is one way that potential copyright holders are fighting back against the training of these tools. And across industries, this is very surprising. I mean, Gen AI can write code, it can design products, it can create content, it can analyze documents, it can accelerate discovery. Recently, the McKinsey Institute reported that up to 30% of all hours worked across the economy could be automated by 2030. And this has been significantly accelerated by Gen AI. This is also expected to disproportionately affect lower wage earners. So there's a lot of good, there's also a lot of bad, there's a lot of challenges that we have to address in this space. I want to kind of generalize this even more. So this is generalizing some of these across various areas, whether that's within IT, whether that's within the expenses associated with it. Let me walk through these, and I'll even layer some more on that came out recently from NIST in the United States in terms of the challenges that are expected. We talk a lot about bias in our paper. We've talked about it a lot in these previous webinars, but GenAI raises these concerns. It takes it to another level. For instance, some of the gender and race biases that we've discussed in training data could become policy given the exposure and given the extent of these tools. As I mentioned before, deep learning models suffer from transparency and are more black box in decision-making processes. Connected to this, we need to consider not only the black box nature of it, but how could it be used for deliberate or inadvertent harm. It's extremely expensive to train these models. So the current CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, he noted that it cost more than $100 million to train ChatGPT. That's not to mention also the code maintenance, the infrastructure, and other costs. One thing that was pointed out by this article by Katie Jones and Sabrina Fortin was mindless parroting. Despite the advanced capabilities, GenAI is constrained by the data and patterns they were trained on. And if you take this a step further, we were already drowning in information before it became so easy to create text, web pages, social media posts, and other works with a click of a button. This massive amount of data certainly could lead to confusion and burnout. We talked about this from the perspective of the medical field with the EMR that was initially designed to save a lot of people time, but certainly it hasn't been the case at least recently. Central to this figure, at least, alignment with human values is completely central to HCAI. One other thing to consider here is the use of these tools without sanction approval by companies, which is referred to as shadow AI. According to available data, about half of corporate employees use GenAI without that sanction approval. We've seen examples even of individuals writing policies about why they can't use it, but using GenAI to write those policies. These are also quite power-hungry tools. We can't overlook the environmental impact. Data suggests that models like ChatGPT could cost as much as powering 30 or 40,000 homes in the United States, even more so in other countries. One inquiry to an LLM is 10 to 100 times more power hungry than an email, as another example. In terms of hallucinations, number 7, or accuracy, hallucinations really are confidently stated but erroneous or false content. And I think we've seen these, probably personally, all of us from LLMs. There are few mechanisms or guardrails to prevent LLMs from just saying, I don't know, rather than fabricating an answer when faced with data gaps. In terms of copyright and IP, lawsuits are mounting from artists, writers, stock photo agencies, and others that allege that their data was improperly used to train models without their permission. This is where that poisoning piece came in that I mentioned before as a way to fight back against this that some consumers have done. There's still a lot of questions about who actually owns that data, how it can be used. And remember that these are trained at a specific time, and the models are essentially static until they're retrained. Continual retraining is important for this. Keeping them up to date requires significant ongoing investment. And we also need to consider the accuracy of the underlying training data. If this is trained on Reddit, you might certainly get some weird answers to questions that maybe have obvious answers. Beyond this, the NIST in the United States has recently published some additional challenges which they've seen. They see that there is potentially lowered barriers to access to nefarious information. So an individual might be able to actually gain information about chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons, or other dangerous materials. It's easy to get access to dangerous or violent recommendations to produce that. If it's videos that incite violence, radicalization, threatening content, carrying out self-harm, etc., there's definitely a lot to consider here in terms of maybe a lot of this information was available. Dark web is now available through an LLM, for instance, that was trained across the internet. Data privacy, we talked about this a lot last time, about leakage or de-anonymization of biometric, health, location, PII, or other types of sensitive data. And clearly the information integrity piece, along with the hallucinations, there's a lowered barrier of entry to generate and exchange unvetted information. On the right side, even more, information security is critically important. I've done some red teaming recently where you try to understand how a model might work. And it's really lowered the barrier for individuals to enter cyber capabilities, attacks, hacking, malware, phishing. In the past, you had to have a lot of information to be a hacker, and now it's really made that simple. There's potentially obscene, degrading, or abusive content. The homogenization piece is something, if we start to see similar aesthetic styles, reduced content diversity, promotion of select opinions, etc. And finally, this piece on value chain and component integration, where maybe we're using procured data sets, pre-trained models, software libraries, which may not have been properly obtained or vetted. This is a field that is moving way faster than the governance. This is a field that has potentially a lot of value, and I think a lot of us are seeing that and using it, but certainly there is a large and growing list of potential issues that we enumerate here. How does that actually fit in with what we've said so far in the 6 grand challenges? I think Özlem and I have looked at this in some depth, and again, this was a very long paper, and we spent a lot of time, very many months, identifying these as grand challenges. And we feel that the majority of these things we kind of foresaw, even though ChatGPT and other of these foundational models have not yet been deployed. But if you look at some of the things we've described, they do fit underneath these heads. Özlem and I have talked about what are our next steps. Do we need a follow-on publication that talks specifically about these changes in Gen AI? And we may still do that. And I think that's part of the purpose of some of these discussions that we're having. But we see a lot of this actually fitting relatively well under the challenges we've identified. Within human well-being, we need to consider the content that we have access to, the parroting piece, how expensive it is to train and run these models, how power hungry they are in terms of querying those models. Considering the human AI interaction piece, we really need to consider how the economy has changed and will change with Gen AI, if that is changing the workplace and the workforce is being displaced. Considering like the design and evaluation framework, these models are very hard to evaluate before putting out into the field. And identifying all the potential issues are extremely difficult, no matter the amount of adversarial evaluation, standard evaluation, red teaming, et cetera, that it's done across the design evaluation framework. So a lot of these things that we had identified, I think they fit well with what we've discussed, but really at a different scale. So that's where we kind of want to go to next. This is going to be a short presentation today. In the past, we've had longer presentations, but really want to have an opportunity to discuss some of these major questions. So some of the major questions that we came up with, these are some of the global questions beyond an individual grand challenge. Does this really present something novel and unique that we have not identified or captured previously? Are there other critical stakeholders we need to consider beyond the researchers, developers, business leaders, and policymakers that we call out in the article and in the recommendations for next steps? And how can we foster greater collaboration between AI research, STS designers, policymakers, and other stakeholders? And what interdisciplinary approaches are needed to address these challenges? We had some additional questions that go into each of the grand challenges, and we'll have these questions in a Google Doc for some initial discussion. But within human well-being, what are the most pressing concerns? How can we ensure that these systems are designed and deployed in ways that are actively promote and protect human well-being, mental health, and quality of life? From the responsible AI perspective, what are the most effective approaches for ensuring that these systems are developed and deployed ethically, minimizing misuse while maximizing social benefits? How can we improve that ratio? From the privacy perspective, what are those primary risks? How can they be mitigated? From the design perspective, what key principles and practices should be incorporated into that framework to ensure that these systems are user-centric, ethical, and aligned with social and societal values? From the governance perspective, again, we're moving way faster than governance can catch up. What structures and mechanisms should be established for effective governance and independent oversight to ensure that these systems are used responsibly and ethically? And finally, from the human AI interaction piece, how can we ensure that these systems augment rather than replace human creativity and productivity? So with that, I will actually stop sharing and we'll go into the next portion where we can actually discuss.
Thank you, Brent. So I think the next steps we would be inviting all of you to join the breakout groups, and we are hoping that we can have some discussions in a smaller groups among all of you, and then you can comment on these 4 main questions that was posed. And I think in the link you will find that those questions, as well as the other 10 questions that we pose in different challenge areas. So if you could share with us your thoughts, and also having some discussions, and you might have more questions perhaps related to these topics. Share with us your thoughts on those 4 main questions that is, overall related to challenges, but then also maybe pick an area of challenge and share some of your thoughts on that specific challenge area. That will help us to have a little bit more input from you, and then we can have a further discussion and together on those comments that you have. And I also wanted to add something, before we go into the breakout sessions. This area is moving really fast, as Brent mentioned. There are so many different efforts from different government organizations within the US and outside. And NIST recently had some publications, and Brent went over them. And I definitely encourage you to look into them. I think there are a lot of good information related to specifically Gen AI. And I would recommend, I would encourage you to look into that publication. There were some public comments requests. I think as of yesterday, that public comment was closed, but you can find quite a bit of information that was developed with the input from thousands of experts and people. And I would definitely encourage you to look at it. There's another new one, I think just last week came out. The name is called Area, and that actually is looking at little. I have the link. Let me see if I can share this here as well. I will just put it here. So take a look at this one as well. This is May 28th, came out just last week, as I mentioned. This is actually looking at developing the methodologies and metrics to identify risks and related to these models, this technology, but from the societal robustness perspective. So I think you might find it more relevant to you all. So definitely take a look at this. They are developing this. This is not, developed, but I think an effort to be aware of. So I just want to kind of mention that. And one other thing, OpenAI had a report was put out there that was kind of talking about some of the influence campaigns by some state actors to manipulate their geopolitical information environment. Something also you might want to look at, and how kind of one of the examples of how some of these technologies are being utilized for different purposes that are some are very relevant to our our daily lives. So having said that, I just want to stop here and we can go to our breakout sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent and Özlem. Great setup for our discussions. I have put the Google Doc address for both the slide deck and for the group dialogue Google document that we're going to be using. And at least part of the questions are in the Google Doc there for you to address. We're going to separate you into 4 groups of either 3 or 4 people. And we'll give you about 20 minutes to be able to have this discussion amongst yourselves. And then we'll gather back as a group and have a plenary discussion. And Brent and Özlem will comment on some of the things that pop up. We would like you in your Google Doc to go ahead and fill out some of your ideas and comments in that Google Doc so that we can at the end share the Google Doc with everybody. And Brent Oslam and Bert will be monitoring what's going on there. Okay, and I will be jumping in and out of groups and generally kind of guarding the pasture that we're grazing in. So here we are. I'm going to create the groups. We'll see you in about 20 minutes. The groups are open. Valentina, did you get assigned to a group? It doesn't look like.
I did. I will actually not join if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine. No problem.
Go. Thanks.
Brandon Oslam, thank you very much. That was a fun slide deck, and the questions are a little bit overwhelming, but they're good questions.
No, I imagine some answers to the stakeholders will include labor. I think that's something that will come up and we'll discuss. So
Yes, yes. That work at the National Institutes of Standards and Technology sounds very interesting. And one of the things that is most troubling about all this to me is the slowness of being able to respond to the political and legal kinds of issues. I was listening to the results of the trial of Donald Trump in New York, and a couple of times people said, well, this all occurred in, was it 2016 or 2015? And now it's, we're, almost 8 years later, and we're beginning to deal with it. And I think that's one of the issues within our society is the lag time that we get between actual events and responses from a governmental point of view and from a citizen's point of view.
yeah, you remind me of a movie, Back to the Future 2, where they go to the future. And it was really funny because this guy broke the law, Biff's son or something, and he was sentenced the same day. And he's like, how could that happen? Well, and Doc says to him, once we abolished lawyers, things got really fast, So, but yeah, 8 years is ridiculous. It'd be nice if justice were fast, right? But and again, with regards to AI, it takes so many people such a long time to develop these governance, and this is just moving way faster than we can move in terms of the government's perspective. So, yeah.
I've had contact with a couple of professors in universities, and I've been interested in the difference in the policies regarding use of AI by different universities. So that one that I contacted, that I had a conversation with recently, we went to lunch and had a great conversation. And he said, my university won't even allow any AI to be accessed from any of the servers that the university has. So that means email or web research and so forth. And he said, from my standpoint, I'm worried about the students going out of the university and not having had experience in using AI and being at a disadvantage. And of course, he's in a business school. So, right, he's very conscious about preparing people for the business world and environment. And then I talked to another professor, and this was just a more casual conversation. And they said, yeah, we're building AI into our curriculums in every department. we've mandated that every department, from philosophy to art to everybody else, must use AI and must work with their students in learning how to use AI constructively. I just thought, wow, from a governance perspective, it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how many organizations are going through similar struggles. So, and I go back to the idea of work from home, remote work. Some organizations are absolutely prohibiting it. Some of them are saying, yes, no problem. Some are in between. And I read an article recently that said that this is one of this work from home is or work from anywhere is what they called it, is one of the major policy issues for the next decade. And that the organizations that choose to not honor the idea of work from anywhere are going to become at a competitive advantage, especially for attracting younger workers. And so again, it's an issue of where do you choose to be on a spectrum of governance? And is it based on, in this case, what my experience has been, old guys like me who are in leadership positions want to have control and are used to having control. And so when people aren't at the office, they assume that those people are not being productive. And so I will choose to demand that all my people be in the office. And that's about me as a leader. It's not about what's in the best interest of the organization from a policy point of view. So I see that as one of the great dilemmas in all these areas, including AI.
It's interesting to see the extreme on both sides where you use it in every department versus you cannot use it whatsoever in art. Yeah, that's surprising. So
yeah,
whether it be work from home or like you mentioned, the use of AI tools. So, but yeah, if you don't learn how to use them in college, you're definitely at a disadvantage, I think, regardless of the field right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think these are tools that, they're, of course, they are very powerful tools, and that they need to be, if you can use it in, different ways, right? We were just discussing, I think, before you all join, with Bert about, in one of the areas that I'm involved in with, using this generative AI for drug discovery, right? You can generate, novel molecules for drug purposes, but then you can also generate them for, poisons or toxic, materials as well. So, I think it's, keeping the humans accountable for the outcomes is one of the keys, I think, for some of the users of it. Just we cannot really punish I don't know about the knife or the blade, right? Because the person that is actually using it, use it to I don't know, cut the bread or harm someone.
Yeah.
But of course, there are some uses of it is, how, the people having access to information that can be potentially very dangerous. That is, it is, sometimes self-harm or harming others. How do you kind of control that kind of, not control, but how do you manage or govern that kind of information environment? And making sure that people are safe from, because the same tool, mental health, research or area has benefited from this kind of resource, because now people you could identify people who have who had issues with mental, or they were battling with mental issues, and that you could reach them, you can provide help with ease, but then also there are certain aspects that can also be harmful. So how do you kind of keep that balance? It's difficult, but it's, you know, it requires some sort of awareness.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not seeing any activity in the Google Doc. Is anybody else? I mean, there's people in it. I haven't seen anything written down.
I haven't seen it. I was just looking at that too, Brent, and I was wondering about that. I think I'm going to put a message out to the troops to please.
Peter, I can see a request edit access button. So maybe people requested access. Have you seen anything in your email?
I have not, but that's a good question. I don't know what I set this up as, so I will send the message and then I will go check that access for the Google Doc.
Yeah, I just checked. I do have edit access, so I can write in the doc, but
Okay.
maybe not everybody else. We could all check, I think.
Oh, I see that there's, yeah.
Yeah, I personally don't have an edit access.
Okay, there's the problem. Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to figure this out.
I just updated the access to editor for all users. It's just that should work. So give it a try now, Valentina, if you can.
Let me refresh. Yeah, now the button is gone.
Okay, good.
It's wonderful when we press the right buttons. I love it.
This is a tool I use every day now that hardly ever used before was Google Docs, and Zoom I never ever use, so I'm always like lost looking for the buttons. So
we had a major crisis at our house this week. I was gone for the weekend, and my wife said that the television was no longer working, and she was referring to the internet not being able to click channels and so forth. And so I got home and I found the same thing. I turned the TV on and couldn't access the television or the broadcast from AT&T, and so I didn't know quite what to do. So I just started hitting reset and checking information, and nothing was working. And so I finally just unplugged the box from AT&T and just left it for a minute. And then I plugged it back in, and magically everything worked. It reset itself. And it reminded me of when I was in the Navy and I was a trained electronics technician on sonar equipment. And one of the things that one of our instructors used to say is, please engage the ON OFF switch in the ON position.
good. Yeah.
And then they taught us how to check circuit breakers and how to check fuses. And one of the senior techs that I worked with said, he said 80% of the problems is a circuit breaker, an on-off switch, or a fuse. And that's what it was with my beloved AT&T box. That just had to unplug that puppy and let it rest for a while. And so my wife, when I talked to her, she was now gone on a business trip. And so I talked to her on Sunday and I told her I had fixed it. And she said, "You fixed it? How did you do that?" And I said, "It's a secret that I learned in the United States Navy." And of course, that never works with my wife, right? I mean, I tried that 35 years ago when I first met her. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. And I said, I just unplugged it and plugged it back in. And she says, "That is dirty, plain dirty. That is dirty pool. That is not fair." I said, "Sorry, sweetie."
I don't know if you saw this week, but the NSA published some recommendations to keep yourself from getting hacked. And one of the ones that that got some press was just to turn your phone on and off at least once a week. That way it disconnects from Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc. Often it will also trigger it to do the update that might have been waiting, etc. But these are one of the recommendations that are kind of widely provided recently. So
interesting. I had not heard that. That's fun.
Yeah, me neither. Thanks for sharing.
Reboot, always reboot. And
It
that's why-
fixes medical devices. Yeah, it fixes everything. So honestly,
Right.
power cycle. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like us going to bed for a good night's sleep,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then you're
you're
back
right.
tomorrow. Similar thing, isn't it?
Good point.
Yes, that's a great analogy, Valentina. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a happy boy when I don't get sleep. Well, we're still not getting anything in the Google Doc that I can see. Let me refresh that and see if I'm missing something.
I think last time you sort of popped into the groups briefly. Is that worth doing this time?
Yeah, I probably ought to do that. I'm gonna go run through each group and then I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
All right.
By the way, Aslam, have you met? I'll talk to you afterwards about. I invited some additional people into the group that attended this time. So
Oh, okay. This group, you mean this meeting?
oh yeah, into the session, into this
Oh,
webinar.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, nice, nice.
Aslam and I are also working on a book chapter, and we've got a lot of stuff that we're still doing.
Yeah. Yes.
Amazing. I'm very new to the STS community, so I'm still like understanding who's who and what are you guys actually doing. But I am very passionate about the whole AI topic, and I live in Lisbon. So, and last week, again, everywhere you go, it's like people talk about AI. You just cannot avoid it. So there's lots of events happening. Like last week, I attended a Gen AI one in person. I'm really, yeah, I want to stay on top of it and, be ahead of the curve, as they say, because otherwise it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
you feel stuck.
Uh,
And I use
Yes.
ChatGPT a lot personally, on like personal level, professionally, like for content, a lot ideas, brainstorming. It's amazing.
For sure, yes. Actually, we are kind of new to this group, this community as well. We were asked to provide some, to do some presentations last, a few months. But so we are new to the group, but it's a very nice group of people with,
Yeah.
from different diverse backgrounds. So we got to learn a little bit about their, their work and, their groups. Yeah, we are on the same boat with you in terms of novelty
Great.
to the group.
And this is your third workshop.
That's
so
right.
I wonder whether there'll be a follow-up, a continuation, do you think? I was thinking maybe in a newsletter we could sum up each session for the people who are signed up for it and then feed that to them for those who
Yeah.
didn't join. I think it would be a nice thing because it's really valuable work.
I know Bert has talked about an upcoming meeting on site in British Columbia, like in September, October, where I think they're going to talk about this at some greater length. I'm on the West Coast too. I've considered going up to that. It'd probably drive from here, but I don't know. Aslam, have you thought about that too?
No, not. I mean, I haven't thought about it. It will be a long drive for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that definitely would be an interesting, conversation. I don't know if they are planning to do hybrid. If that is the case, I definitely would be interested in joining some of the sessions, but in person, I'm not sure. I think. Do you know what the dates are?
I can tell you, I think it's 15, 16, 17 of September, but let me just quickly double check because it's on the website.
Okay. I'm available, but
while she's checking that, Aslam, question for you. What is your university's policy on the use of AI tools, if you have a policy?
I think they've been doing some, I mean, you can use it, and I think they were trying to have the students, use it, but, you need to kind of use it to, get information, I guess, but not plagiarize, right? Like you need to kind of understand the sources of it and things like that. So I
Okay,
think that's where this, I'm not 100% clear on that, though. I can check and get back to you.
oh, it's reasonable. Sounds like it. So
Yeah. It's really hard to kind of limit that use. I think I'm not even sure if it is productive either. Just kind of understanding or the talking about the limitations of it. Is it, or the ways, the, kind of best ways to use it. I think probably is more better approach than just kind of closing it off and not allowing, because people are gonna use it anyways, right?
Right.
So
Right, the dates are 18th to the 20th of September. So 2 days.
okay. Then probably if we can do, if it is possible to do it. Do you know if it is hybrid or just in person?
From what I know, it's only like in person. I don't think
Okay.
they've planned for a hybrid version,
Sure.
but I can double check and follow up with you. I'm 99% sure it's only in person.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
okay.
like I've worked in similar organizations before where we during COVID specifically had to organize hybrids afterward, like that transition. It is really challenging, like to have
Sure.
face to face. It requires so much more resources and time, and as a non-profit, I don't know, it's not always possible.
That's right. No, it definitely makes it a lot more challenging. I mean, we have done some teaching online too, right? Like when it is in person, it's easy. When it is online, it's fully online, it's easy. But when it is hybrid, it gets harder, because then you can, it's harder to hard to pay attention to what's going on online, what's going on in class. So yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. But yeah, is the idea of summarizing all 3 webinars and then having a nice short article for people to go out next month? Do you think I might have to reach out to you if I can't find everything
For sure.
from Brad?
Sure,
Yeah, happy to
yes.
help with that. Yeah.
Yes,
Amazing. Thank you so much.
of course.
So there are some interesting questions popping up in there. I've seen a few about societal impacts with regards to job loss, Oslam. So I've been trying to follow the data on this. We don't have a lot yet, but the daily use of Gen AI isn't like 100% of people. It's kind of increasing slowly, just like internet did, I think initially, I think is what people have talked about. We haven't started to see those job losses yet. It might occur, but I think something to say to that is regardless of the, and I feel like AI right now represents an industrial revolution, not just an evolution. Every previous industrial revolution generated more jobs than were displaced. People went from like actually doing a lot of the physical farming work to using animals, to using steam engines, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, we adapted to this technology. I think it'll be the same here. I guess the other piece, and we've talked about this so many times, is in the past, all of those improvements in the industrial revolutions were really related to like human physical work, which, clearly machines can do better than we can, or animals, et cetera. And this is really the first time where it's been a direct kind of fight against human cognitive work, the thing that makes us uniquely human, et cetera.
Yeah.
Not that we're certainly there yet with AI, and I think that we should make that point clearly. But this is kind of a little bit unique from that perspective. So.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think so. Some of the areas that we thought was, hard to replace, not at least, in a short time frame. But I mean, one of them was programming, right? I mean, we thought that was something that would take a long time to replace, eventually probably, yeah, right? But this sudden availability of, programming at ease with this kind of, but of course it's not there yet, like you said, but it's, timelines is not clear, I guess. How long would it take for this technology to actually produce, comparable, capabilities, I think, right?
Okay, so it looks like there's something in Team 1, Team 2, and Team 3 now. Gen AI puts the 6 grand challenges on steroids. That's interesting. So, isn't that great?
That's a good. I think Pete is going around and getting
Yes.
people to put some of those on paper.
Room 3 is Chandra, Peter, and Terry. And room 4 is Antonia, Hane, and Trond.
Do we want to write the names of people in the file, or does it not matter?
No,
It
I was
doesn't
just
matter.
seeing who was there, if I know them. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Was that your birds, or Valentine? Do you have birds that?
It's mine. It's at my end.
Nice. What kind of birds do you have?
Well, it's outside. I have the window open because it's so hot. I live,
Okay.
Lisbon is 20 minutes away from the ocean. So I moved over that side, and it's going to be like this up until November. Hot and sunny. It's nice, but it can get a bit too much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Özlem, the first thing I noticed when I moved away from Florida was that it was so quiet, because you're used to birds everywhere all the time. So there's just so much noise of the wildlife that you kind of miss when we went to the desert. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, just yesterday we opened the door, and there was, it was kind of at the end of the day, I guess the birds are going back to their homes, or so many animals making sound. It was almost like it was loud, right? Like they were all so, you're right. There's a lot going on here. But we cannot open our windows as much because it's too hot here.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have AC? I imagine you have AC.
Yeah, we have AC, so that helps. I don't think you can live here without AC. It's just impossible.
I would love to have it as well. The thing is, in Portugal, they don't have central heating and they don't have AC unless you like modernize your house and make it, nicer.
But probably it's not much needed either, because, for instance, I mean, I'm from Turkey, and the region that my parents live, it's on the west coast, and it's on the Aegean Sea. Where they live you need a little bit, like a few days of heating and few days of cooling. But for the most part, if you open the windows, you get enough breeze into the house. So yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah, you can get by, but here I think probably it would be challenging. Yeah, but then winter is very nice here, so I cannot complain.
No, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So they've got 3 more minutes.
And I think we were going to end with like 5 or 10 minutes for Peter and Bert at the end to kind of talk about next steps, but go through it. If you see anything that we want to address, we'll try to address quickly as many as we can. and end at like 11:20, 11, well, whatever time it is, in 15 minutes or in 20 minutes.
Sounds That is there is a lot going on with in terms of governance too. You know, every day there is a new thing, either
Yeah.
a report or some new effort.
We want to ask the teams to present anything that was really cogent, like one major argument, and try to go through that way, or do we want to just go ahead and respond to what's in the doc?
I think some sort of report out might be a good thing so that we have a better understanding of their thought process, because these are kind of short statements, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
And Aslam, I have to drop right at the half hour for some additional internal meetings where we're talking about this red teaming piece and all the pieces that I was kind of discussing. But if you can, if we need to stay on a little bit, I know we've gone a little bit long the last couple of times, but today is just
Sure.
something bookended me, so I jump off.
Sure. No worries. Yes, I'm here.
And we should talk on Friday anyways about our book chapter. So if you have time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that will be good, because then I will try to share what I have so far with you by that time as well.
And a lot of it actually addresses these questions, the environmental piece. We're writing a chapter on AI for good, for social good. So.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
When do you expect to have it published?
We have to have a draft at the end of the month, but I think the publication usually takes like 6 more months at least. So it's a little bit
That's
slower.
yeah. Yeah. Hopefully
Great,
by
good.
the end of the year. Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you. By the way, I think there was another email about the book, the other book chapter, right? That they want us to respond to. Did you see that from Konstantin?
No, oh yeah, I'll check that. Yeah, we can chat about it.
Okay.
The elephant in the room is back. Oh.
Yes, yes. That was great fun. It's great fun that we actually chose that as a mascot for us. Welcome, everyone. We are back as a group, and
We got everybody back, Pete?
I don't know. Let me check the tally here. Yes, we are.
Okay.
And we have a lot of stuff populated in the Google Doc, and thank you very much for doing that. And so Brent and Aslam, why don't you jump in and let's carry on with the discussion for another 20 or so minutes.
Perfect. One thing that Aslam and I were discussing, we saw some comments under Team 1 that talks about the potential for job loss and the need to kind of understand that up front, whether that's going to affect tax revenues, et cetera. In some of our previous webinars, we've talked about this a little bit in the article and some book chapters we've written about this. We've kind of compared what's happening in AI right now to the previous industrial revolutions, of which there's been 3, and I think many would argue we're in the 4th industrial revolution, or industry 4.0 right now. In every case, we saw human work being displaced by mechanical work or steam engines or gasoline, et cetera. And in every case, there were job losses, but there were a net job gain every single time. And I don't believe this is going to be different. I think with the AI boom we're seeing right now, I think we'll see some movements for sure. I think that there's some things that can be potentially better automated, but I believe that along with all the previous industrial revolutions, we're going to generate more jobs than are lost. And so, you know, we can look into some of the data on that in terms of how many people are using the systems now and jobs that have been lost, et cetera. But that's something to consider just from kind of the historical perspective.
Brent, can I comment on that? Because that's
Sure,
one of the things that causes me a great deal of angst. I work in ag. And if you look at the advent of mechanization in ag in the United States, in that context, it resulted in the mass depopulation of huge parts of our central part of the United States, hundreds of grower suicides as they lost their farms due to their inability to keep up, massive land concentration in the hands of fewer and fewer people, and also downward price pressure on agriculture commodities to the benefit of a very few people and not so much to consumers. So as I hear, you know, the statements about job creation, my over anxiety, it's not going to be where I live. And it's not going to be in thousands of rural communities across North America. It's going to be elsewhere. And what's going to happen to these amazing communities that I and many of the people that I love live as this displacement happens? And so I think that's something that we need to be very cognizant of as we talk about job creation, where and for whom. And I doubt it's for, in my case, the Mexican immigrants I've had the honor of working with for the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's a great point. We also discussed this a little bit from the perspective of the move towards more remote and hybrid work and work from anywhere policies and companies who don't do that, putting themselves at a disadvantage. I think the key there is you have to have the resources to be able to work from anywhere in an appropriate level. Think about internet access, et cetera. But I feel like there may be an opportunity. I think that there has been some individuals who've left the San Francisco Bay Area, for instance, to move to other parts of the country or other parts of the world and still been able to do good work. There's certainly been others who have clamped down on that and required people to return to offices because they're already investing in that, et cetera. But I'm hoping that might be kind of an opportunity in some of these rural communities that you mentioned. But it's a great point that you brought up.
I think what I would offer to Brent and Eric is that in the same way that human-centered AI calls for the design to be based upon user experience, I think the deployment, the more that the deployment is reliant upon significant stakeholder participation rather than simply the rolling out of the technology, that some of the management of the impacts can be achieved by the perspective of the stakeholders. Otherwise, I think what Eric's saying may very well occur, that people will be hit by a tsunami rather than being able to manage the process of deployment itself and the decision about whether or not to deploy.
So can I
What do you
jump
think,
in there?
Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
I think I'm really interested in this idea of human agency, because what's happening here is because we don't have enough on the human agency, i.e. human capability or the human in data, or it's poorly executed. We're talking about an unequal argument in terms of we've got a lot on AI, or we know, you can frame your position. But what we're not doing is focusing on the human, and almost we forget to focus on the human and how we can valorize that and place it at the center of what we're doing. So for me, there's something around data, human data, the creating of thresholds, in as much as you would then create potentially around governance. You're creating thresholds in terms of the human AI interaction piece. So the outcome piece makes sense in relation to these collaborative pieces or these partnerships, such that the outcome would then drive policy making that would then hit those key metrics in terms of ag and so forth, because actually all workers would have access to AI in a way that would augment their capability, because all of their capability has been mapped, whether they're blue collar, white collar, whatever. So there's a piece about the human that for me, I'm desperately trying to see if there's synergies on who's writing about this and where it's coming from, because I think unless we're looking very firmly at that pillar and how we're collecting the human in data, such that we can index them against the AI and the value of the AI in terms of that augmentation piece, then I think it's quite a circular argument, and it goes into that dystopia around actually what's going to happen that's going to take our jobs. But actually, I don't think that is a future. I'm more with Brent, but I totally understand, Eric, the position you're coming from.
Well, let me just weigh in on this. I'd like to kind of thread the needle of the last 3 or 4 comments and get back to Brett. I think what will be different in this revolution will depend on whether, and this gets to the second question that we were asked, whether the stakeholders include frontline staff and unions, particularly in the United States. And I think with that, without that, the potential for AI to be useful and to be human-centered will be diminished. And I think, what is also going to be a critical factor is the extent of social media and other types of technologies that people can keep up with that were never part of the other revolutions. And what I'm sorry I missed the last segment, the last session on healthcare, because I have a lot to say about that. But I see that unless those stakeholders are included, there's going to be a lot of pushback and fighting back without the ability to look at some of the potential uses, and then as well as the misuse, but needs to be refined. And I'll give the example of the electronic medical records that in many ways is a very important tool for people to have information, but it's driving doctors and nurses out of the system. They never were part of the design process. So I guess the question I have is how to make sure those stakeholders are part of the process and are understood by management, IT, and lastly, the designers of the actual AI. I mean, what's now, there's a colleague of mine who's now looking at how the designers are laying on healthcare systems a design that has maybe had little to do with customizing it in that situation, and might be implemented and will have terrible results because it would be like electronic medical records. And I guess the question is, how do we learn from these examples of what happens when these stakeholders are left out? And then the question is, how do you have those stakeholders brought into the process? And I can just say that a group of us are fighting for helping the unions in the United States who are involved with healthcare to think about that. In Norway and in Scandinavia, there's much more research done by unions about what's going on than in the United States. The research that unions do in the United States is, how do we win a campaign? How do we organize Volkswagen workers? I mean, all of that is important, but it takes, this area is not seen yet by the unions as being such, and you said it, Brett, by 2030, there could be 30% of jobs at stake. I mean, that's a huge amount of people who gets displaced. And to Eric's, concern as well as mine, where they're going to end up and where those communities are going to end up without that revenue source, without those resources. Anyway, I think the critical thing is, how do we bring those stakeholders into it and help them have the knowledge about what's going on so they can contribute to the discussion about how technology, and particularly AI, can be a value-added process. I think if they're left out, we can do great research and we can, talk at conferences, but it's going to have very little impact on the jobs.
Hannah, could you share with us?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I was very intrigued about what you were saying. Yes, in the Scandinavian countries, we do involve the union, and it's because 50% of the employees are member of a union. So, and that's a low number in Scandinavia. It's much higher in Finland and Sweden, for example. But what you're saying about healthcare is also very interesting, because we have the similar situation even here, where we have a union which is so strong that they are not involved in developing the healthcare system, or what we have called health. In Trondheim, where I live, we have a huge problem going on now with something called the health platform, and it's really how we make digital platforms for collecting data, but also make communication between the doctors and the hospital and so on and so forth. And the union and the doctors and the nurses, they have not been included in that work as much as they should have, of course, we know that, but they haven't. So I'm just thinking that with artificial intelligence, which so many of us know so little about, I'm talking about myself first and foremost, but also workers, nurses, doctors, stuff like that, it's even more, what can I say, difficult, scary, a black box that they are not being involved in. And I think that's a larger problem. I think we will see bigger problems with that than in many other technologies that we have made use of in history, I think.
I'd like to announce that in the United States, we have a cultural deficit in terms of involving stakeholders. We have talked about it in terms of the labor, the union represented people involved, but I would say that it's broader and that there are very few organizations that have a sincere desire to involve stakeholders, and that there is even a bias against involving stakeholders. And that I'm saying that's a cultural characteristic of the society in the United States of America, the land of the free, home of the brave, the cradle of democracy, you know, all the other exceptional things that we accuse ourselves of. We are dreadful. We are terrible. That has been one of the biggest battles that I've had to deal with through the last, 50 years of my career.
Özlem, anything you want to respond to with regards to like our user-centered design discussions in the paper and how that could be useful moving forward?
Yeah, so when we were when we were trying to come up with some design framework ideas, I think this kind of conversation needs to be ongoing. I guess I think the stakeholder group evolves with the technologies. As also we know that these technologies are adaptive technologies. Their use, purpose, and behavior changes as we move through their life cycle. And also the technology right now is developing so fast and furious that I think we need to continuously look at the structure of stakeholders, the landscape of the governance, and the policies and regulations. They will be continuously changing and adapting as these technologies are being, being developed, change, and evolve. So I think the structure needs to be flexible enough to, involve those people and as necessary. Now, how do you ensure that? That's a big question. I don't really have an answer to that, but I think we need to make a, concerted effort, and that needs to be, I think, maybe, every organization, either it's a state organization or the private or public organizations, needs to have this kind of, mindset from the big, and each time the organization changes and evolves, that mindset should remain, and we need to, as the new organization is established, those kind of stakeholder involvement requirements should remain, right? Who is now the new stakeholder? How can we involve them? And I really love some of these suggestions that you have included in the document. Law enforcement, I like that because we make these regulations, then somebody has to enforce them. How does that look like, right? And from their perspective, from the law enforcement perspective, and others that needs to enforce those regulations to be held throughout the life cycle.
I put a couple references into chat from a gentleman named Andrew Harmer Law, and he gave a presentation, Power Structures and Their Impact on Software, and quite a good talk at a conference in Paris. And then he's got a book coming out dealing with software architecture and empowering teams. And I think this is at the heart of what we're talking about, that to the degree that we exclude stakeholders, we are going to make the software not do what it needs to do in service of humans. So human-centered artificial intelligence is not going to work without stakeholder involvement. And the people that historically have suffered at the hands of those in power are those that have less education, come from socioeconomic groupings that are less financially viable and less politically viable, and those that are represented by unions. And that's...
And I would add to that when you combine that grassroots stakeholder representation with the interdisciplinary and collaborative, that's when it actually takes on some richness and some life of its own, because then it starts showing the value to everyone, not just a cursory, oh, we'll check that box.
Yeah.
I would also go back to the diagram from the first of these roundtables. I believe the one where it shows what humans do and what AI can do and what AI will take over. And the concept that if done correctly, AI will, instead of taking over the best of the human parts, will add things that we were never doing before. And so if we're talking to stakeholders correctly, then, for example, doctors and nurses are offloading the pieces of their job that are driving them crazy right now of data entry and record keeping, and are keeping this where we need that human intervention, where we need some discernment, and likewise in other industries as well. I would also argue that small and medium-sized businesses have to consider their stakeholders a whole lot more than the really big corporations. The 800-pound gorilla can step wherever it wants, but if you want to be competitive as a small enterprise, you have to be agile, and you have to take into consideration what your employees need to keep them and what your customers need in order to sell things. And that's where, again, that's where the interdisciplinary approach really takes hold, because if we silo academic and developer coding, how people really act in the real world, that's when crazy things happen. So many times I've seen something that's done by a planner. It may be an urban planner or an engineer who's working in a cubicle, and he or she are in their office, and they're not really thinking that what they're typing in front of them connects to real people. So that's what I am passionate about with this, is how do we connect it to real people so that they and all of us. And Eric, I would love to talk with you offline sometime. I've got some ideas about how we might help those who are literally at that bottom of that food chain and still protect them. Would love to have that conversation.
You two will have a wonderful conversation, because both of you are amazing humans. So that will be good. We are at our time boundary. And that sucks, because we could go on all day and all night and into the weekend that's coming up. which is a long ways away. I'm delighted with what y'all have shared, both in terms of the verbal sharing, but also in terms of what you did in your small groups and have put into the Google document. I want to especially thank Özlem and Brent for a tour de force of 3 separate sessions that have been interwoven and connected in an absolutely delightful way. And I would also like to express my gratitude to Bert, not as the emperor, but as the president of the STS Roundtable, for the sponsorship and the willingness to promote what we're doing. And speaking of promotion, Bert has a couple things that he would like to share about things that are coming up in regards to the roundtable. So I will share screen, and Bert, if you could go ahead and talk to these slides, I would be most grateful.
Bert, you're on mute. Bert, you're on mute.
We've been on something of a journey here over the last few months, really, to educate ourselves about the nature of AI and the nature of human-centered AI. And for that, we really are appreciative of the contribution of Özlem and Brent. They are not only wonderful scientists and engineers, they're wonderful people, willing to share their knowledge in a way that we have to share knowledge with those of us that we work with if we're really going to give stakeholders a chance in addressing these challenges. So I want to remind folks that we've come on a journey. We're going to, I think Pete put the recording of these 3 sessions on our website and the slides so that there's a knowledge base there that we can continue to draw on. And if you go to the next slide, Pete, we have an opportunity coming up in a couple of weeks, June the 19th, to continue to apply what we've been discussing here about how stakeholders can have a role in the design and the deployment of new technologies like AI. We're going to be joined by 2 of our European colleagues who are going to share with us their research and their methodologies associated with technology for workable work. These are Europeans from Belgium who've been working with stakeholders and researchers in trying to find technological and organizational solutions to utilizing new technologies like AI in a way that's going to improve job quality. So that'll be a session on June the 19th, and it'll be led by Ezra Deseris, who is a research manager at the University of Leuven in Belgium. And Ezra is going to be joining us in September. And if you go to the next slide, Pete, this is a reminder that all of this that we've been working on here is somewhat of a prelude for us to really dig more deeply into many of the questions that came up today in terms of how to properly utilize this new technology in a way that is going to support human-centered work. And not leaving it to be done to us, but we have to invent that future. And so we're going to have a gathering in Vancouver over 3 days where people will be given the opportunity to actually prototype AI-supported work in a variety of sectors like healthcare, agriculture. And in fact, Eric has been very central to bringing together a robust cohort of people in agriculture that will actually be prototyping the future of work incorporating these new technologies. So I would encourage you to learn more about this roundtable, which you can find out from our website, and hopefully you'll join us in Vancouver, where we've capped the numbers of people because we want this to be a very intensive, participative experience and not, just listening to presentations. But we are going to have some very significant thought leaders joining us, one of whom will be Ben Schneiderman, who is the author of the book, Human-Centered AI. Ben will be joining us as a resource during this conference, along with a few other very informed folks, along with union folks, frontline workers, as well as employers. So Pete, I hope that people take advantage of these opportunities. And thank you for giving me a few moments to sort of wave the flag.
You're very welcome.
Can I just ask one question? And when,
please,
Brett and Oslin, is there going to be a shortened version of the paper available, like an abstract? And the second thing is, in the work that it's very impressive, the work that you've done to pull this all together, the research. If there are opportunities where you think union leadership would be useful in those conversations, I would surely help you try to connect you to unions, particularly in the healthcare space, that might be very interested in hearing from you and others who are much more deeply involved in this whole issue. So I just want to put that out as a go-to action item.
Thank you, Peter, for the offer. Definitely, we would be reaching out to you. That would be very valuable. And we have a new publication that we will be we are hoping to put out within the next months. But that will be the extension of this 6 challenges as it applies to generative AI. So the conversation that we have today and some of the feedback that we received today, hopefully we are going to utilize towards that paper as well. This was really helpful for us, so I appreciate it.
Well, I guess we need to pronounce our meeting at closure. Thank you again for everybody joining us. It's been a delight to have this conversation with you. I'll keep this meeting open for a few more minutes if anybody would like to continue discussing. But again, we express our gratitude to you, and especially to Brent and Oslin. Brent had to run off to another meeting. And again, thank you. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So Oslin, we've got to keep in touch.
Sure, yes, I just want to wait and see anything that you would like to discuss today, or are we good and we can reconnect later? Oh, I need to take
I hope that you have found this to be constructive and helpful in your research and practice. We've said that's one of the things we want.
One thought I would like to hear your feedback on, Oslin. As we're listening to the discussion about stakeholders, and I think this is built into the model that you have of the AI development cycle. But I think the more that design can be considered incomplete and emergent, dependent upon the contexts in which it is used, you may be able to give support for more significant stakeholder involvement in the design of the technology. If it's all seen as a design stage and then a handoff to a deployment stage, I think that really limits the potential for stakeholder involvement, because you never can get it all right at in terms of the initial set of stakeholders that you may involve. And not only that, generative AI is a very multi-purpose model. That's one of the things that I think distinguishes it from the earlier forms of AI, which were more sort of single use case type of technologies. Anyway, that's just a thought. Does that make sense, that the more you can think of the design process as very emergent and very incomplete, and therefore stakeholders, as they even start to take on the technology, have to get involved in appropriate kind of configuration of the design.
I totally agree. I think that's one of the key features, I mean, or points that we were trying to kind of make in the paper and in that design framework. Basically, it's a continuous,
Yeah.
and the involvement from stakeholders and involvement from the different, the different individuals along the way is absolutely needed to ensure the appropriate outcome, because as you mentioned, it not only evolves throughout its lifetime, but also the behavior is so fluid that needs the feedback as we are designing. If not, then we are kind of abdicating that responsibility to those that do not necessarily have the knowledge to make those decisions, right? For instance, developers or programmers are making some of these decisions, ethical decisions, that they may or may not have the full understanding of the implications of those decisions that they are making. And I think
Yeah.
it's really important that we involve this continuous, and it needs to be iterative, that we make some
Yes.
changes and then iteratively getting the feedback and then making some adjustments along the way.
Yeah. So one thing we could do, Özlem, and in terms of keeping in touch, is whenever we think that there's an article or something that's come out that others of us might be interested in, please share. I mean, that's why I shared that document with you, for example. I thought
Yes.
maybe you'd probably have read it, but if not, here it is. It's an interesting piece of work. Feel free to send
Definitely.
us whatever references that
Absolutely.
pop up for you, that you know where we're coming from
Yes.
now, and we understand you better than we did before. So I think we can share
Absolutely.
information on a continuous basis now.
Absolutely, definitely. I'll be happy to, stay involved and in touch, and we'll share things that I feel might be of an interest with you. And definitely we will, we'll be in touch. I will be, involved as much as, that I can help. Yes,
Sure.
for sure.
Well, yeah. Well, this is hopefully just the beginning for us.
Yes, definitely. And as we are writing the paper, we'll be in touch, because I think this information was helpful. And as we are, by getting some of the pieces I'm using, we will definitely acknowledge the group as well. I think this was incredibly valuable for me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's very good music to my ears. I'm glad we could make this collaboration be productive for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was great talking with you over the few months, and I will be in touch.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye, Özlem.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pete, for getting us started on this road.
Well, you're
Thanks.
welcome, my friend. We were able to accomplish something, right?